All right. So, Matt, the other day, Nash ate the entire bag of Scrabble tiles. So we had to take him to the vet, because that's not healthy.
No.
So we took him to the vet, and they said they were going to try to get him out. But so far, no word yet.
I was trying, man. I was trying to think of the punchline.
Good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable, because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing all right.
Good. So before we get into it, we'll say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. We're happy to be associated with the Podbelly Network. You can find a list of shows there that I promise there's something in there that you're going to like. So go check them out. Plus, they've got some tips and tricks on podcasting if you're looking at doing such a thing. Also, check out our sponsors. Use our vanity codes that we have. Get you a discount with our sponsors. Matt and I have said it before, but if we do an ad for a sponsor, it's because we like that product. We're not doing ads just to get money. We do it because we believe in the product and we think that you guys are going to like it or appreciate the product. So check it out. In our show notes, you'll find links to their websites and the promo codes if there are any. Also, go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales. Sign up to become a patron. We have multiple different levels there, and we've got a buttload of episodes in our back catalog. You'll be trying hard to get to the end of it if you want to do all of them. But all of our tiers get a bonus episode a week. Then our $5 and $10 get the video versions of those. Plus, they get the ad-free audio and video versions of the main episode. And our $10 a month, they get all of that. Plus, they get our second show, Side Quest. So if you like hearing Matt and I talk, and you like the way we give each other hell every week, you will love Side Quest, because we don't do anything like Graveyard Tales, and it's a bluer show. We basically are just recording Matt and I messing with each other with what we would normally do if we were hanging out. Hey, check out this list of crazy stuff. Hey, check out these videos.
Yeah.
And I need to do that again, Matt. It's been a while since I've done a video episode for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I've been compiling, so we need to do a video where I show Matt just some messed up videos and get his reactions on them. So if that sounds cool to you, go over to Patreon, sign up, and watch or listen to Side Quest.
Yeah, check it out. And now's a good time to do it going into the summer.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take a road trip. You're going to go on vacation. Hey, give you something fun to listen to, and you'll help the show.
Yep. Listen to it while you're sitting on the boat in a cove, and all the fishermen around you will be like, what are you listening? How do I get that? And then share Graveyard Tales with them. Promise you're going to enjoy it. So on that note, Matt, that's all I've got for the housekeeping and the annoying part of the show. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay. So, when Adam pitched this topic out, I was like, yeah, it sounds great. I was like, what the heck is he talking about? I have never heard of this at all. And I was stunned.
He's never heard of the place.
Yeah, I've never heard of this place at all.
No idea.
No. I know the place, never knew it was haunted. But tonight we're going to talk about Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, yeah, I know you're doing the same thing. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Niagara Falls is
the
haunted.
Water?
Well, there's some activity going around the falls, and we kind of touch on why it might be there.
Right.
But there has, I never considered when you said this, Adam, I did not consider how much action during the War of 1812 that Niagara saw.
Yeah.
And, we've talked about battlefields in the past, and now it makes perfect sense.
Right.
But I'm not as big of a history buff as Adam is. I enjoy it. But if you asked me about the War of 1812, you know what I'd tell you? Pretty sure it happened in 1812.
And there was at least two sides that were fighting.
Yeah. So anyway, tonight you're gonna enjoy this, because if you're like me, you had no idea. But let's get going on Niagara Falls.
Right. So as we always say, go check our sources down at the bottom of the show notes. We got a bunch this episode. There's a buttload of sources because there's a buttload of information. And if you think I'm making up the term buttload, no. Go look it up. There was a unit of measure called a butt, and it was used to measure like wine and spirits. So we have an entire butt of sources this week. So
a whole butt.
Yeah. So go down bottom of our show notes and check out our butt. But I've not been.
We're already going off the rails.
Oh,
we
yeah,
hadn't even started well.
It's going to be one of those episodes, so buckle up. I've never been to Niagara myself, so
nor have I.
Okay, so to get this information, we had to go to the source who has been there, and so those sources are in the bottom of our show notes. Now, let's talk about Niagara Falls, or as it looks when you write it, Niagara.
Yeah,
and
right.
I never spell it right, even though Niagara, there's an extra A in there to me. When I say it, Niagara, I think it's Niagra, but no, it's Niagara. So right, Niagara Falls. Now, Niagara Falls is a waterfall that's on the Niagara River in northeastern North America. Now, the falls actually lie on the border between Ontario, Canada, and New York State. And they're in two separate principal parts, and they're separated by Goat Island. So if you look at a picture of Niagara Falls, you'll see two large falls, and that landmass that's in between them is called Goat Island.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, maybe it's the greatest island of all time. I don't know, but now the larger division that's adjoining to the left or the Canadian bank is Horseshoe Falls. Now its height is 188 feet and the length of its curving crest line is about 2,200 feet. Now, I'm just going to jump in here real quick into my notes and say this. When I think of Niagara Falls, because I've not been there, I assume that it's going the opposite way. So the left side of the falls is in Canada and the right side is in the U.S. I feel like the right side should be in Canada and the left side should be in the U.S. But, I know history. I don't know geography too well, and the geography of rivers, that doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway.
When you said it's going backwards, I was like, what? Like the falls goes up or something.
Goes up, yeah. That's the other hemisphere. That's the southern hemisphere that it does it.
Okay.
So, like I said, the American Falls, which is adjoining to the right bank, they're 190 feet high and 1,060 feet across. Now, Niagara Falls is characterized by sedimentary rock layers that were deposited during the Ordovician period, which was 485 to 444 million years ago, up to the Devonian period, so 419 to 359 million years ago. Now, the uppermost layer consists of erosion-resistant dolostone and limestone that came from what they call the Lockport Formation. And this hard layer actually protects the falls and slows erosion. So it hasn't eroded away completely and become just a dip in the landscape due to water erosion because of these layers of dolostone and limestone. But beneath that cap rock, they've got softer Rochester shale, and that erodes more easily. And then below that is the Queenston Formation, and that has shales and fine sandstones and stuff. So the differences in the hardness between these layers are the key to Niagara Falls' development, because as it erodes the softer layers, it undercuts that harder capstone. So it'll cause the occasional collapse on the edge of it, but that's what makes the falls so impressive and not just a little hill, is because that capstone is so hard. Now, the modern Niagara Falls, as we know it, was formed approximately 12,000 years ago during what's called the Wisconsin glaciation at the end of the last ice age. So as glaciers retreated, they left behind meltwater that carved out these river paths in the basins, including the Great Lakes. So the Niagara River followed this rearranged topography, and it cut through, a bunch of layers of rock to create the Niagara Gorge. And Niagara Falls has actually been retreating upstream since its formation because of the erosion that we were talking about. So the falls, they actually erode on average about 1 foot per year. So every year, Niagara Falls goes a foot upstream. But it's been slowed because of human intervention. So we've stopped this, or slowed down the natural rate of progression. Mm-hmm. If we hadn't have done anything, it would have been 3 feet per year. So we've cut it, down to a third of the erosion time. So we'll have the falls for longer thanks to that.
Oh, so it would eventually move enough that the falls just wouldn't exist?
Yeah. Huh. It would erode enough to where it would keep going back upstream until it hit rock that wasn't that capstone, and then it would just erode down and it would just be a little hill. So it wouldn't be a falls anymore.
Okay. Again, I'm stupid. And I was thinking the whole falls would just move further away. You're talking about the angle would change.
Yeah, as it went up and hit different rock, it would
eventually it would just look like rapids.
Yeah,
floating through there. I got
correct.
You.
Yeah,
I got you.
Now, over the past 12,500 years, the falls have moved approximately 7 miles upstream from where they initially were. Now, the immense volume of water that flows over Niagara continually reshapes the geology there, because there's approximately 750,000 gallons per second that flow over the falls. So that's more than I can even picture. 750,000 gallons a second.
I know. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that sounds, you're like, God, Matt.
That's a lot.
But I mean, the volume of that much water, I mean, it's just amazing, that it just keeps pushing through year after year after year.
Yep. That there's that much water. You
would think at some point, the drought conditions or something would really begin to affect it.
Right. Right.
But I imagine it has, but not substantially.
Right. It's still an impressive flow. Now, there's dissolved minerals in the water, and they kind of make different visible changes in the rock structure and coloration. So when you're looking at the falls, you'll see different layers of rock that are colored differently due to the minerals and stuff in the water. And the erosive power of those hundreds of thousands of gallons that flow over the falls created features like whirlpool rapids downstream. So The erosive power doesn't happen just at the falls. That amount of water flowing over, if you look at the river past the falls, all of that is shaped due to the force of that water coming out of it. Now, during the peak flow, and this is because, for one, we have intervened with slowing erosion, and two, we have put power plants for hydroelectric power at the falls, because why not? There's that much energy in the falls.
Right.
Somebody was going to take advantage of it. So because of that, then during the peak flow in the summer months during the day, 168,000 cubic meters, so 40 million gallons of water flow over the falls every minute. The water falls at 32 feet per second, and when it hits the bottom, it has 280 tons of force. I'm just pausing because the water falling out or falling off of Niagara Falls hits with 280 tons of force. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but what makes anybody think they could survive going over that?
Yeah.
In a
barrel.
In a barrel, or some guy tried to do it in one of those inflatable balls. He didn't make it. But,
right. This is extraordinarily dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Now, on average, there's 30 million gallons per minute that cascade over the falls throughout the year. So if you average the peak daytime flow and then the off, like the at night non-tourist season, when it flows, then it averages out to only 30 million gallons per minute.
Mm-hmm.
But during the non-tourist season, or at night when nobody's taking the tours up to the falls, they reduce the flow, and it's only about 50,000 cubic feet per second. So, because they then divert the water into the hydroelectric power plants rather than going straight over the falls. Now, believe it or not, Niagara Falls has been stopped or dewatered several times in its history. All right, so let's take a second and talk about one of tonight's sponsors, and that's Masterclass. Now, I don't know how many of y'all know about Masterclass, but Masterclass is great for yourself or as a gift. And we got Father's Day coming up soon, and I know as far as my dad goes, my dad's going to get this because there are cooking classes, and one of them is Texas style barbecue. And I have taken this course because you live in Texas, and if you like grilling and barbecuing, you got to know what to do. So they have a Texas style barbecue with Aaron Franklin that is amazing.
Yeah.
And it will teach you how to do a brisket in no time flat. And if you want to earn your stripes in Texas, you got to be able to do a brisket.
That's right.
Some of the other ones that I'm kind of looking at that they got a little bit of everything. And it fits for me. It's Think Like an FBI Profiler with John Douglas. And that's the FBI profiler that wrote all these books and stuff. So a great class. You can learn a lot. And songwriting with John Legend. I mean, I can't rave about Masterclass enough.
Yeah. And with Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month billed annually, a membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every single instructor. It is an amazing deal. I got it for my parents for Christmas this year, and they love it.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even just in audio mode.
Great if you're traveling, you can still learn.
Bingo. You got a road trip coming? Find you a Masterclass and bam. For the next 3-4 hours, by the time you get to where you're going to be like, I know it all right now.
You get to your destination and you can already make a Texas-style brisket.
That's right. That's right. So get ahead in life and business with declassified techniques from former CIA officers. Learn how to spot a liar with FBI profiler John Douglas that Adam mentioned earlier.
Yep, that's the one I'm taking.
Yeah, and uncover the truth with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Bob Woodward. If you don't know who Bob Woodward is, you need to go find out.
No kidding.
And these classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. So if you want Masterclass to make a positive impact on your life, all you have to is go to masterclass.com/graveyard, and our listeners get a discount of at least 15% on any annual membership. That's masterclass.com/graveyard, GRAVEYARD.
That's right. Masterclass.com/graveyard, GRAVEYARD, and you'll get at least 15% off an annual membership. You couldn't ask for more. I didn't know that was possible.
I didn't either.
But they did it most notably for engineering and conservation purposes. Now, in the 1950s, they wanted to do riverbed modifications. So under the 1950 Niagara Diversion Treaty between Canada and the U.S., water diversion for hydroelectric power was balanced with preserving the scenic beauty. So workers dewatered parts of Horseshoe Falls to reshape its lip and the riverbed so it would reduce the erosion and, keep the consistent water flow over the falls. So approximately 100,000 tons of rock were removed, reshaping the falls from a deep V shape to a wide U shape. So in doing that, they enhanced hydroelectric efficiency, but were also able to maintain Niagara Falls as a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
So that was in 1950. Now in 1969, they dewatered the American Falls on the America side because they had concerns of erosion and rock falls that were threatening the stability of the American Falls. So they had to do something. And a massive talus pile at the base of the falls had accumulated over centuries, so it reduced the height of the falls and altered its appearance. So all of the rock that had eroded away over centuries were piling up there at the bottom, and so it made the waterfalls seem shorter than it actually was. So they wanted to remove that. Well, starting June 9th, 1969, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers constructed a 600-foot wide cofferdam upstream to divert water from the American Falls over to Horseshoe Falls. So this allowed geologists and engineers to study the rock face and remove unstable debris. The American Falls remained dry for 5 months. And during this time, they put sensors in to monitor rock falls. But a lot of that talus pile that we were talking about was left in place to preserve natural conditions. Now, when Niagara Falls was dewatered in 1969, 2 human bodies were discovered at the base of American Falls and a deer carcass, which, if that's the only deer you find down there, that's amazing. But the bodies that they found, the human bodies, it was a man and a woman. Now, the man was described as being 20 to 25 years old, had brown hair, and he was wearing a green plaid shirt. Witnesses had seen him jump into the river shortly before the dewatering process began. Now, the woman was found wearing a dress and a gold wedding band inscribed with "Forget Me Not" on it. Now, both of these individuals were never identified. So they found 2 unidentified bodies at the bottom of the falls when they dewatered it. Now, the man's body was recovered first, but the females' remains were decomposed a lot, which were found jammed among rocks halfway up the talus bank that we were talking about. So this halted work temporarily as they investigated and stuff like that. Now, despite Niagara Falls' history of accidents and suicides, only those 2 human bodies were found during this process, and that actually surprised a bunch of people because Niagara Falls has a reputation for fatalities. So,
yeah.
It was surprising to onlookers and the people dewatering it that they only found those 2 bodies. But to me, I think it's surprising that you would find those 2 there because of the force of this water. Usually they go downstream. They don't bind up at the falls.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Yeah, it had to have been like a 1 in a million shot for them to get caught where they did. Now, on average, between 20 and 30 people die at Niagara Falls every year. The majority of these deaths are suicides, with estimates suggesting that approximately 20 to 25 suicides occur annually. And accidents and daredevil stunts also contribute to the death toll, but these are less common. So we were talking about surviving the falls in a barrel. That's one of the things that happens here is people have tried for hundreds of years to, quote, survive the falls in some daredevil act. And I didn't really include any of those because A, they're dumb. So I'm not going to promote anybody going over Niagara Falls. But 2, you can just do a quick Google search and find the ones that have tried. A woman tried and survived in a wooden barrel. Next, a guy tried to survive in a wooden barrel with his pet turtle. Yeah, he took his pet turtle in this barrel with him to go over the falls. The turtle survived. The guy didn't.
The turtle survived.
The turtle survived. Probably because that guy's got a built-in full-body helmet. And the man was like, I'll wear a barrel. That'll be my turtle shell. And then another guy more recently tried in one of those inflatable balls that you see people get in and run down a field in. That didn't work because of the hundreds of tons of force that it hits with at the bottom of the falls.
Right.
But let's go back in history a little bit from now. And before European settlement, there were lots of wars fought on the land around Niagara Falls, and there was a lot of death from a lot of other things. Now, the Iroquois-speaking neutral nation, Attawandaron, they originally inhabited the Niagara area, and they lived between the Grand and Niagara rivers, and they were called neutral by the French because they generally stayed out of conflicts between the Huron people and the Iroquois. So they lived there. And then in 1647, the Seneca, a member nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, attacked and conquered several of the neutral villages. And in the early 1650s, further attacks from them led to the destruction of additional neutral settlements. And these wars, combined with smallpox epidemics, devastated these neutral nations, and it almost led to the near extinction of these nations. And it was all from the Iroquois wanting control of the falls, because the falls have always been a spiritual place for Native American tribes.
Yeah.
And the Ojibwe people, during their westward migration, they had a lot of notable conflicts with the Haudenosaunee in that area. And these conflicts were significant enough to be remembered in the Anishinaabe oral history. And they were followed by periods of peace and then the formation of distinct groups in that area. But they had such horrible wars at that area that they were passed down in oral history through the generations, just saying, hey, this was horrible what happened here at the falls, all for control of this land, and many, many people died. Now, these wars and conflicts shaped the indigenous landscape of the Niagara Falls area long before European arrival, and so it set the stage for later struggles when the colonial powers were there. Now, the region surrounding Niagara Falls, like I said, has long been a site of strategic and cultural importance, and the control would shift between different various native nations, then the French, and then the British over several centuries. So many wars have been fought on this land for control of the falls. Now, the French were actually the first Europeans to settle the Niagara region in the early 17th century, and they established missions and trading posts in the area and everything. And to secure the fur trade and territorial claims, the French built Fort Niagara at the mouth of the Niagara River, controlling the vital waterway linking the Great Lakes and the interior of North America. Well, the French ended up allying with some of the native groups there, notably the Huron and the neutral nations that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And they were able to conquer the Iroquois and then, a little bit later, British influence. Well, then the British wanted to dominate the fur trade and expand their colonies. So they allied with the Iroquois and challenged the French. So this culminated in the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War in North America. So all because of this area. Now, what's called a pivotal event, the British and colonial forces supported by the Iroquois and other native allies, they captured Fort Niagara from the French after a 19-day siege in July of 1759. This victory ended French control of the region, and it secured British supremacy over Niagara for decades. So, a ton of early bloodshed at Niagara Falls and in the lands around it. Now, I mentioned that in the area, Niagara Falls has a lot of suicides and accidents. Well, you've got to recover those bodies when somebody goes over the falls. So a lot of them become trapped in the rocks and debris at kind of the base of Horseshoe Falls in the jagged rocks below the American Falls. So it's not like right where it goes down where they found those two bodies. But if you were to go down and then out a little ways, you get rocks there that are jagged that have fallen off and they're kind of pointing backwards. They kind of act as a stop for these people. But if they're not lodged at the base, they often get carried downstream by the currents, and some are found in the lower Niagara River, the Whirlpool, or as far down as the Niagara Falls Power Vista, or even all the way into Lake Ontario because of these currents. Now, the swirling currents in the Whirlpool area can trap bodies for extended periods, making recovery difficult. The Niagara Regional Police Service, New York State Police, and other specialized recovery units, underwater recovery teams and stuff like that, conduct searches in the river and along the shoreline for bodies that have gone over. Recovery can take days, weeks, or even months. And in some cases, the bodies of these people are never found due to the force of the falls and the unpredictable currents.
I would think that would be common.
Yeah, more common, yeah.
Just like, we can't find them. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, how dangerous would it be to even attempt these recoveries?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're putting other people's lives at risk for, if somebody's trying to go over as a stunt, that's a dumb thing to do. And not only have you, taken your own life,
Mm-hmm.
but you're putting other people at risk.
Right.
To just recover your body. Now, I understand, if there were other circumstances at play, it was an accident, or if it was, somebody that was looking to do self-harm, that's different. But, so many people have done dumb stuff right there.
Right.
That has, gotten themselves in a situation that killed them. You're just kind of like, we got to go and try and find this guy's body. And
Yep.
I mean, you're fighting all kinds of issues. So
Yep. Currents
that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't want that job.
No.
That's for sure.
No, that's a very dangerous job. Now, I mentioned that they had hydroelectric power on there. So I want to touch on the Robert Moses Niagara Power Plant. Now, there was a catastrophic collapse of the Sholkoff power station in 1956, and that killed one worker and destroyed a lot of the existing hydroelectric infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So the New York Power Authority started constructing a new massive hydroelectric facility, what they call the Niagara Power Project, and it later got named the Robert Moses Niagara Power Plant. The construction began in 1957, and it was completed in 1961. The project cost approximately $800 million to build, and at the time of completion in 1961, it was the largest hydropower facility in the Western world, capable of producing 2.4 gigawatts of electricity. Now, the construction of this required the excavation of over 12 million cubic yards of rock, and it involved 11,700 workers. Now, during construction, 20 workers died in construction-related accidents. So, due to the dangerous working conditions along the river gorge and the use of heavy machinery, notably, there were 2 massive Euclid construction trucks that fell into the river during the project. So, 2 of these big construction trucks fell into the river and killed the drivers of that, plus the other employees that died. And the collapse of the earlier Sholkoff power station in 1956 that prompted all this resulted in the death of Richard Draper due to it collapsing. So just these power plants have had a lot of death surrounding them. Now, before Matt gets into telling us about ghost stuff, I've got one that kind of ties to a historical event, so I wanted to tell y'all about it.
Oh, okay.
So there's a local teacher in the area by the name of Bill Kennedy, and he was actually a tour guide for that Niagara Falls State Park there.
Mm-hmm.
One night, he was walking through, just taking a walk by himself, and he saw this little light that was kind of hovering above a log in the river. So as he, it caught his eye, and he's watching it. As he watches it, he said the light changed into the outline of a human. And so it looked like a glowing humanoid figure. So like you've got the dark humanoid shape with a light kind of being projected behind it on this log. And then all of a sudden it just blinked out and disappeared. He believes that this event coincides with the story of Joseph Avery.
Adam, let's take a second and talk about one of our newest sponsors, Ollie. Now, if your dog could talk, mine can. I don't know what the heck's wrong with your dog. Mine
Right.
talk to me all the time.
I know, mine talk back all the time.
But they would warn you about what's lurking in their bowl. Mass-produced kibble is not appetizing.
Yeah.
It's just not. Some people say it could even be a crime against canine health. Mysterious byproducts, unpronounceable preservatives, and who knows what fillers. Sounds more like evidence from a crime scene than dinner. Okay?
That's no kidding.
And we love our dog. And We want them to be happy and healthy. And so Ollie is here to help with 5 fresh protein first recipes like beef with sweet potatoes and turkey with blueberries. I didn't know dogs eat blueberries.
Oh, yeah.
My dogs love them now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Your pup won't have to wonder what's in their food ever again, because when it comes to their health, the only mystery should be where you hide the treats.
That's right. And we have a picky little Yorkie that, I mean, we got a beagle, and if you know beagles will eat pretty much anything, but he loves the Ollie pet food. But our picky little Yorkie is so happy that we switched over to Ollie, because he feels like he's eating the same food that we're eating, and sometimes he's eating better than we are. Now, here's how it works. You introduce your pup to Ollie. So you fill out Ollie's 30-second quiz, and they'll create a customized meal plan based on your pup's weight, activity level, and other health info. And then for any first-timers, Ollie will send out your pup's first box with 2 weeks worth of meals, a free storage container for mess-free serving, and a guide on how to gradually switch them over to their new diet. There's a lot of benefits with Ollie, and there's more excitement at mealtime. You get a shinier coat and solid, easy to pick up poops, which is a big thing for me because doo-doo is my kryptonite. So the easier it is to get them, the better. There's 1 to 2 months on Ollie, and that will help your dog reach a healthy weight, which is a big deal for Nash, our beagle. And Ollie offers 3 meal plans to choose from, so you can choose between a full fresh plan, fresh topper plan, or a mixed plan with their freshly baked recipes for your special fur baby. And they also have treats and supplements if you want to go that extra mile and get them treats and supplements. Ollie is the only fresh dog food that comes with unlimited routine health screenings, so you can get your pup on track to living their healthiest, happiest life. The dogs deserve the best, and that means fresh, healthy food. Head to ollie.com, OLLIE.com/grave, tell them about your dog, and use our code GRAVE to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today.
Yeah, and Boone and Bella said to tell you guys, this food is great, so give it a try.
It was probably more like, this food is great.
I won't imitate their voices right now. But Ollie offers a happiness guarantee on the first box, so if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/grave, GRAVE. You enter our code GRAVE to get 60% off your first box.
So this story is wild to me, Matt. I tried to picture myself in this position, and like it freaks me out completely. Well, on July 18th, 1853, Joseph Avery and 2 other Sand Scout workers reportedly got drunk, and they set out in a small boat on the upper Niagara River. Not a good plan from the beginning, to get drunk and then go out on the Niagara River in a small boat. Well, the river's currents quickly overwhelmed them, and their boat ended up getting swamped in the American Rapids. So there was Joseph Avery and 2 other men in the boat. The 2 other men were immediately swept over the American Falls to their death. So boat got swamped, they got sucked out, and immediately went over the falls and died. But Avery was able to grab onto tree roots or a log that had become lodged between rocks just east of Chapin Island, right above the brink of the falls. He hung on to this perch for 18 hours. He was visible to onlookers who ended up gathering on shore and on Goat Island. And throughout that whole night and into the next day, they were making desperate attempts to rescue Avery. And rescuers tried to get to him by sending a boat tethered to the Goat Island Bridge downstream toward him. And at one point, Avery managed to climb onto the rescue boat, but the strong current immediately capsized the boat, throwing him back into the river. Now, after 18 hours of this ordeal, Joseph Avery lost strength and was swept over the American Falls around 6 p.m. on July 19th, 1853, and he died. They say his struggle and failed rescue attempts were widely reported, and the event captured public attention across the country. And you can actually find pictures taken of poor Joseph Avery out there in the middle of the river, clinging on to these logs that somebody had taken during somewhere in that 18 hours of his ordeal. But the teacher, Bill Kennedy, thinks that because this light that he saw was on a log out there in the middle of the river, that it ties to Joseph Avery's spirit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty cool story.
It's crazy.
I mean, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, I had no idea. I'd never heard any of these stories. But with the history that Adam has talked about, the bloody battles that went on around Niagara Falls, the sheer number of deaths, whether by accident, being stupid, or suicide, it's gonna put that negative energy in that entire region, not just the falls. And as we look at some of these stories, it seems to branch out and affect so many of the buildings. In fact, there are so many locations in the greater Niagara area that are considered haunted that we would have to do 3 shows to talk about all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so I went through and tried to pick out some that were the most interesting, maybe had more activity than others, but it is, I don't know that I've ever looked at an area that had that many haunted buildings in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, even we've talked about some of these towns that were, you know, the town is haunted, like Savannah. When we talked about Savannah, we had a list of a lot of places. This is very similar.
Yeah, it is.
One of those places we're talking about is the Niagara Parks Power Station. I mean, how does a power station become haunted? But this is the story of the power station. The Niagara Parks Power Station, it began construction in 1901, and it played a vital role in the development of Niagara Falls. The power station, it was a huge undertaking, and hundreds of workers worked on it to get it completed. But when you think about it, it was the tail race tunnel was excavated by men using shovels, pickaxes, and dynamite. I mean, they didn't have, you know, these large machines, these, you know, earth movers. They didn't have that.
Right.
Shovels and pickaxes, and then dynamite just to blow through the rock. Yeah. So knowing that, these workers, they faced just imminent danger every single day they were on the job, and accidents were pretty common. But the most famous story about the power station is that of Annette Rankin. And she was the wife of William Rankin, the founder of the Canadian Niagara Power Company. Now, William died only a few months after the power station was completed. How many times do we hear that? The person dies, you know, that spent all these years and put all this effort into making something a reality and then dies right after it's done or right before it's finished. Never got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't very long after his wedding to Annette. But after his death, Annette Rankin, she pretty much fell into a really deep depression and she disappeared. But staff will tell stories of seeing a well-to-do woman in a fur coat moving around in the area below the generators. And
That's
they
weird.
believe that this is the spirit of Annette looking for her husband.
Yeah, I can see that.
Why else would you see somebody walking around a power station in a fur coat?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the place for a fur coat, lady.
So nobody really knows what happened to her. But
I bet she died.
Definitely, they've seen her spirit. Yeah, I bet she died. I got money on that. Now, as Adam said, Niagara Falls has become infamous for the number of suicides that occur there.
Yeah.
And it would stand to reason that the lingering negativity and the bad energy just permeate this entire region. Some visitors say they have felt this.
Yeah.
Especially along the trail that leads to Three Sisters Island. Now, reports of sudden feelings of deep depression and despair have overwhelmed visitors at times, leaving them with this severe feeling of dread and anguish. Others describe the feeling of a force just invading their mind, almost forcing them to want to jump into the river.
That's wild.
And some have even reported a sense of fear that is so strong, you would want to die just to escape whatever was causing it.
Oh, wow.
Death is better than this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. That's fear. True fear.
But this reminds me when we talked about the Aokigahara forest in Japan.
Yeah.
Because people say the same thing about that. Is there an energy? Is there an entity that's there that pushes people over the edge? Somebody that may be just depressed, may just have thought about it. They come there, and instead of changing their mind or realizing there was much more to live for, they go through with it.
Yeah.
It's scary to think you've got this place that's had so many suicides, and which came first? Is there an energy there for centuries old that almost promotes people doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Or has all of those suicides combined built this energy? And when you visit, if you're sensitive to this, you can actually feel it.
Right.
I don't know, but it is really creepy when you think about it.
Yeah. Could it be, lingering from all of the Native American wars that happened, all that bloodshed?
Exactly. Now, there is one spot. Now, I must admit, I dug through a lot of stories, and then Adam asked me, what about Devil's Hole? I said, what are you talking about? He's like, you didn't find anything on Devil's Hole? I was like, no, nothing. And he's like, oh, man. So he tells me. So I was like, okay, well, let's go see if I can find something about Devil's Hole. And I did. And Devil's Hole is a cave in the cliff of the gorge just below the whirlpool. And it has been nicknamed Devil's Hole. It has a really cool legend associated with it. Okay? Haunting, let you be the judge. But the legend is really, really cool. So the story goes that La Salle, the explorer, the French explorer, he looked down into it. And he had a Native American guide that told him that this was the home of the evil spirit. Not an evil spirit, the evil spirit.
Yeah.
But this interested LaSalle. He was like, oh, really? So he immediately decided he was going to go down in it. But his guide begged him, don't do this. You don't want to go down there. This has been in the Seneca tribe for generations. We do not do this. And then he told him this story. Ages and ages of prosperity and happiness to the red men have passed from the time of his first creation. The Great Spirit loved his red children and gave them this country for the sole use and enjoyment. So it would have continued forever if the great falls of Niagara, whose thunder we now hear so plainly, had continued near the spot where your canoe landed. But the red men became bad and vexed the Great Spirit with their war parties. The rocks began to fall off amid thunders and storms, and scarcely a moon passed that was not marked by some change. Moons and moons passed, and the falls were above this devil's hole, which then became open to the rapids, and the evil spirit could get out. Noise of thunder, shrieks, and groans were often heard from his darkened den, which greatly excited the curiosity of the young man. One of them, a fine young brave, insisted upon examining the secrets of this dark prison house. Armed for battle, he descended with much difficulty, and we never saw him more. Then came the word that the palefaces in the vast canoes, which could each carry an army, had come out of the great sea and landed under the midday sun. The evil was distant, and we thought little of it. Time passed on, and another of our young men descended into the cavern. He returned in a few hours, a raving maniac, and his hair, which had been black and glossy as the raven, had become white as snow. Then came the word that a paleface, John Cabot, had landed on the shore of the great sea, convinced that the spirit of evil lived in this deep, dark hole, and that the fate of the red man depended on his not being disturbed. Such, declared the guide, is the tradition of our race. Judge them, my white brother, whether you could disturb the evil spirit in this abode and not suffer the penalty. Pretty cool. So to at least the Seneca tribe and the Native Americans around that area, they believed that this hole that was once covered by the falls was a gateway to the home of the most evil spirit. So LaSalle told him, I respect your tradition. He had 11 men with him when he left Montreal, and all of them followed him back from the west end of Lake Ontario to the mouth of the Niagara River. And they joined up and they said, okay, we won't go down this time. Okay?
Not with you watching, we won't.
Right. So a day or two later, LaSalle just couldn't stand it. He was eat up with it. And so, according to the legend, he went into it alone without the knowledge of anyone. Didn't tell anybody. He just said, I'm going. And as he went in, he heard voices, and he said they were distinct, and they led them to the mouth of a small cave that was partly filled with ice. And here he heard a voice in the Iroquois language that said, return to your home in Canada, and wealth, honors, and a long life and usefulness will be yours. And when death comes, generation of your descendants will follow you to your grave. And history shall transmit your name to prosperity as the successful founder of a great empire. Proceed to the west, and although gleams of hope may at times shine in your path, ingratitude and disappointment will be sure to meet and follow you. until a treacherous murder shall end your days remote from human habitation, without the shelter of even a wigwam or friendly red man. The eagles of the desert shall strip the flesh from your bones, which shall lay bleaching under the tropical sun, unburied and unprotected by the cross you now so devotedly cherish.
Hell, I'd go back to Canada.
All that.
Yeah, I'd go back to Canada.
He heard all that.
I mean, geez.
Now that was it. That was all he said he heard. But he left. He took off.
Yeah.
He was like, that's enough. And he regretted that he went down there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But so when he got back to his men, he found that some of them had deserted and already started going back to Montreal. And so this was his first misfortune after he went into Devil's Hole. So he proceeded west, and during his journeys, he reached Niagara and passed the Devil's Hole again, and at least 10 visits in all. And when he passed it for the last time in 1683, he must have thought, that all of this, all the problems that he had imagined for himself after hearing this curse, some 14 years before, had been fulfilled. And he was going back to France. He had lost all of his fortune. His Indian empire, they call it in Illinois, was wiped out. And his plans to secure the aid of the French to found a colony in Louisiana, they were gone as well. So that he thought this was the conclusion of the prophecy. And there's even a story that LaSalle was later murdered. Okay. So he had all this crap happen to him. Here he was, this great explorer when he first got there. 14 years he did this.
Yeah.
And had all this misfortune.
Well, the problem is he made two wrong turns. One, despite being told not to go into Devil's Hole, his dumb butt went ahead and did. And then when he went in there, the spirit said, go back and you'll be fine.
Leave. Yeah.
And he goes, nah.
And goes anyway.
So he has no one to blame but himself for that.
That's right. And it's funny because I can remember when in like grade school, you're studying the explorers, you learn about Balboa and Cortez and all those guys. I remember talking about LaSalle. I don't remember this story.
No.
Hey, all you folks out in the graveyard, I've got a podcast that you need to check out if you haven't already. It's called Odd Trails. If true stories of the strange and unexplainable are your thing, if you're listening to us, then it obviously is. You need to hear Odd Trails. Each week, Andy and Brandon explore firsthand encounters submitted by listeners. Stories of lost time, cryptids in the woods, ghostly visits, and reality glitches that defy all logic. And don't worry, they saved the personal banner for the very end.
Which we can't say that we do. We talk the whole time. Now, these aren't campfire tales or secondhand urban legends. They're raw, deeply personal accounts from people who experienced something that they can't explain and that they haven't forgotten. Odd Trails is for anyone drawn to the eerie, mysterious, and the really drawn to the question, what's really out there? So you can search for Odd Trails wherever you get your podcast. But they say, fair warning, do not listen alone.
All right, there's another place that is a big spot for tourists to visit, and local teenagers like to go down there too. This is one of those like, the haunted cabin in the woods or the mystery
haunted railroad tracks
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is the Screaming Tunnel. And the Screaming Tunnel is an old train tunnel that actually never had any trains go through it at all. They believe that it was built for a new line, but the plans changed, so the tunnel was abandoned. And instead, the train track was actually placed on top of the hill directly above it. And it's still there to this day. So
all the people who dug that hole are pissed.
Right. But since it was ever used, and it's really questionable if there's any paranormal activity there at all, what makes it so special? Why do people flock to it? Well, how about this? The story starts with a drunken husband and father who lived in a house that was once on the opposite side of the tunnel, away from the main road. His wife was fed up, threatened to leave, and she was going to take their daughter.
All good stories start with a drunk husband.
That's right. I don't know about that, but
It's facetious, but
yeah. But in a drunken rage, he assaults his wife, knocks her unconscious, and the daughter runs outside in fear and hides in the tunnel.
Jeez.
Now, the father knew that she would go hide in the tunnel, so he followed her in, and this is bad, but it's just a legend. He poured gasoline on this little girl and lit a match.
Oh, my God.
Now, because of her violent end, the legend says if you go into the Screaming Tunnel at night and light a wooden match, you'll hear the little girl screams as the wind blows out the fire.
Oh, geez.
So kids like to go down there and kind of test the legend, see if it's real, see if what happens. And in fact, the author of one of these articles that I found, he did it. He went down there. He said he stood in that tunnel with some friends and he lit a wooden match, and suddenly they heard this tremendous screeching sound. And they said a breeze was definitely felt at that time, but it wasn't strong enough to blow out the match. So here they are standing there, just open mouth, looking at one another, and then they realized that there was a train going across the tracks directly above them.
There you
That's
go.
what they were hearing. So it makes you think, okay, this is some, weird phenomena that happens, and it echoes down through that tunnel, and somebody came up with this legend.
Yep.
But
it's really weird, though, that a train passes every time a match is lit.
No, it's just, how many matches were lit that, nothing happened.
Right.
But the one time that this guy goes, a train goes right overhead and says,
Yep. That's crazy.
Hey, that's enough to make you wet your pants, man.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, and just real quick, you saying screams and stuff, it reminded me, there's a lot of people that say when they're standing near the falls, I know we're past the falls now, but when they're standing near the falls, they can hear screams at night. So the legend is that it's, people that have died, but then it makes me wonder, since that scream was a train, could the screams that are heard, could sometimes that be water, peeling off certain rocks or something and creating screams that they assume are hauntings, but
echoing and reverberating in that area.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it makes for a good story.
Sure.
But let's talk about one that's not just a story. This one really happened. And this is a home that, a historic home right there near the falls, in that area, that was owned by Laura Seckard. And Laura Seckard, if you've never heard of her, she was a hero for the British during the War of 1812. Now, after the Battle of Queenston Heights, she came across information of another attack at Beaver Dams. So she had her husband there in her house, and he was injured, and she snuck out. And she walked over 32 kilometers to warn the British of this pending attack.
Am I just lazy that I wouldn't want to walk that far?
I mean, how long would that take?
Yeah, no kidding.
32 kilometers. How many miles is that? I don't know. I can't do the math there. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot. More than 20.
Right.
Okay. But because she did this, the Brits were victorious. But she got no recognition at all. None. Until she turned 85 when the Prince of Wales heard her story while he was visiting.
32 kilometers is almost 20 miles.
Almost 20. Oh, well.
Yep. 19.88.
I was close.
Yep.
Now, when the Prince of Wales heard about this, he rewarded her. Now, she's 85, mind you. You know, this has been a long time. He gave her $100.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for the help. Here's a hundy.
And that was a lot of money then.
Sure.
But still. You know.
All this.
He could have just given her a hearty handshake, I guess.
That's true. Just a T-shirt. I walked 20 miles and all I got was a stinking T-shirt.
Yep. But Laura Secker died in 1868 at the age of 93 and is buried beside her husband, James, in Drummond Hill Cemetery. The family reports some odd experiences that have been had by the tour guides that work in Seckard's home. Disembodied voices are routinely heard in different areas of the house, and the figure of a woman, believed to be Laura, standing beside the bed where her husband James healed after the battle. Now, a group of guests reported that while looking around the upstairs bedrooms, they heard a loud crash coming from the kitchen. Assuming to find the mess of many smashed dishes on the floor, they were surprised when they found the kitchen empty with absolutely nothing out of place. So there's a little bit of stir here. But remember, I said Laura and James were buried nearby in Drummond Hill Cemetery. And there has some hauntings of its own there, but Adam and I are always skeptical when we hear about haunted cemeteries because we've researched several and they just turn out to be spooky places with no real activity.
Yep. Legends more than anything.
Yeah, but Drummond Hill is different. And the reason, it's because it's it's the site of one of the largest tragedies in Canadian history. The Battle of Lundy's Lane during the War of 1812.
Yep.
About 2,000 men died in some of the most violent ways.
Yep.
Right there.
I almost covered the Battle of Lundy's Hill.
Yeah.
Because it was so violent.
Yeah. I mean, it was brutal. And that land where the battle took place and all those people died is now Drummond Hill Cemetery. So the energy left behind by this bloody battle can still be felt. And a lot of visitors say that it just has a feeling when you step into the cemetery. A lot of visitors report seeing shadows, which they believe are the leftover energy of the soldiers that died on that land.
Mm-hmm.
But they said they have seen ones dressed in a Royal Scot uniform. Some have reported seeing 3 soldiers in standard British redcoats. And they seem to be limping as they walk along. During a group visit, guests of a bus tour were exiting the bus, and one woman said she felt a cold breeze against her neck. She spun around and screamed, which caught the attention of all the others around her, and staring in disbelief, shadows began to hover over all of these random gravestones at the main gate.
That's crazy.
And so this was witnessed by not just her, but by
Several
all
people.
the people on this tour.
Yeah.
I'll be like, next, please.
Yep. Can we move on? I'm
Let's skip this part of the tour.
For some reason, I'm not liking this spot. So can we head on a little bit?
Yeah. Now, right here in this same area is Fort George. And Fort George was built between 1796 and 1799, and it was a crucial British military outpost during the War of 1812, which, remember, occurred in 1812.
Right. 1721.
But the fort was a key strategic location overlooking the Niagara River and Lake Ontario. And it saw intense battles, including the Battle of Queenston Heights, which we mentioned earlier, and played a significant role in the defense of Upper Canada. But despite being captured and destroyed by American forces in 1813, the fort was later rebuilt and is still a historic landmark today. But it's been reported that Fort George is haunted by the spirits of the soldiers and their families. Visitors and staff have seen a young woman's ghost occupying the officers' quarters, and she is often seen following tour groups around through the fort.
Getting a free tour.
Yeah, it just so happens that the grave of a young girl named Sarah Ann is down the road at St. Mark's Cemetery, and it's believed to be the resting place of this girl's body that is connected to the spirit that haunts the fort. There's also been the apparition of a man who looks out from behind the bunk beds and follows visitors around. They say there's also a peaceful spirit that's there, and they usually see him laying on the bed. But it's not uncommon in the fort to have doors open and then slam shut all on their own, which, you know, that could be the wind. But with all these apparitions, you begin to wonder.
Oh, sure. Sure.
But this one I loved. Just around the corner from Fort George is Fort Mississauga. And the spirits that haunt this area are actually rarely seen inside the fort, but instead, apparitions of soldiers with missing limbs and even missing heads have been reported walking across the greens of the golf course that backs up to the old fort site.
Are they missing heads because they got hit by golf balls?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I thought, can you imagine going out playing, you know, let's go play 18. And they're like, what about those two? You think they'll let us play through? Yeah, wait a minute.
Can we play through? Please?
That dude over there don't have a head.
Right. The other one's carrying his arm. What's going on?
Yeah. Told you should have said 4.
That reminds me, I saw this video. The guy that lives on a golf course, like at the edge of a golf course, his daughter posted this video, and it says, every time somebody hits their ball into my dad's yard, he does this. And he goes out there and lays down in the yard by the golf ball and acts like it hit him in the head. And he waits till they come up to try to get the golf ball. And then he'll stand up and go, oh, God, what happened? You know, and freak him out.
That is hilarious.
I would do something like that if I lived on a golf course, but
I'm not a golfer.
No, me either.
I have been golfing, you know, enough to know that I'm terrible.
I've been to putt in a driving range, but that's it.
Yeah. And I have played in one of these courses that is in a, you know, essentially like in a neighborhood in a really nice community. And there's houses all around you. And I'm like, I am not good enough to play near this many big old nice houses.
No, my stepbrother lives at the edge of one. And I've asked him how many times a golf ball has broken out his back window. And he's like, well, surprisingly never. I'm like, oh, you just wait. It's going to happen one day.
Listen,
you get somebody like me golfing and it'll be shanked right into your back window.
There is one of these places right here in town where I live. Really, really, really nice homes and a really nice golf course that runs right through the middle of it. And I see a lot of patients in there. And I've had more than a few tell me they have lost windows to golf balls. I'm like, I believe it. I bet. I'm like, what do? I mean, you know.
You got to have a different kind of insurance for living on a golf course, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't know how that works, but I know this. The golfer that hits the ball is not necessarily responsible.
Right.
Because I'm like, you live on a freaking golf course. You know?
Yep. I think whoever bought the house is responsible for windows being broken. You're taking that risk.
That's right. Now, I'm gonna touch on this just briefly. This is outside of. It's still in the greater Niagara area, but it's away from the falls, and it seems unrelated, but it is a fascinating story. This occurred in St. Catharines, and this is a famous poltergeist case where a police officer was investigating what he thought was a domestic dispute, and he wound up being asked to come look in another apartment by a woman who was outside asking for help. And the things that he saw, and he actually brought in a priest and another officer and documented all of this stuff that lasted for 28 days.
Wow.
And I mean, everything, furniture moving, people being picked up, all kinds of stuff. It is a long story, and it is amazing. So if you're interested in the St. Catharines poltergeist, go check out our Patreon, because I'm going to be doing a follow-up to that, a deeper dive into the St. Catharines poltergeist case. I'm telling you, it is fascinating. But I want to finish tonight with a personal experience story that I found after digging, and this one is really, really crazy. And it occurred at the Niagara Falls View Hotel. So this is the hotel that's right there at the falls, where you can look out your window and look down and see the falls. So this is right there at the falls.
Rooms that would give me vertigo.
Oh, I'm sure. But this is the story. It says, if you ever go to the Niagara Falls View Hotel, don't stay in room 5849.
Okay, I'm staying in 5849.
That's right. You may not after you hear the story. They'll tell you it's safe. They might say it's the only room available. Don't listen. Go to another hotel if you have to, but don't go into that room.
Oh, wow.
The story
They're
says,
adamant.
My girlfriend and I decided to visit Niagara Falls as a Valentine's Day weekend away. I booked it all a few weeks in advance, and we were both eagerly awaiting the trip as the days counted down toward the 17th, the weekend after Valentine's Day. When we got there, they told us they were overbooked, and the person at the check-in desk appeared slightly anxious as she told her we were being upgraded at no extra charge. You'll be staying in a suite with a view of the Canadian Falls, which is an upgrade over your previous room, she said. She said she was smiling, but not with her eyes. Enjoy your stay at the Falls View Hotel. She handed us our room keys and pointed us toward the elevator, telling us we would be staying in room 5849. I couldn't help but notice that her hand was shaking as she handed the keys to me.
It seems ominous.
We entered our room, and I immediately felt a chill run up my spine. I jerked my head around, trying to find the source of the feeling of eyes upon me, but of course there was no one in the room but us. Do you feel that? My girlfriend Jennifer asked. She shivered and clutched herself. I don't like this room. Can we get a different one? And they said both of us reluctantly entered, and I went over to the phone on the desk in the corner, hoping to reach the front desk. I called downstairs and made an excuse that the room was too cold, which it actually was suddenly, and was told they were completely booked and there were no other rooms available. Now, after they went out and did some sightseeing, visited the falls, had dinner, the couple returned to their room. And they said the unpleasant feeling wasn't so strong this time as we entered, and I tried not to mention it. Instead, I looked out the window and enjoyed the view, which we hadn't done the first time we'd entered the room because we were too anxious to get out of there. After a while, we both settled into bed. It was hard to fall asleep, but eventually I did. When I awoke, it was to the sound of splashing water. I felt freezing cold as if I were in a giant refrigerator. As I exhaled, I could see my breath plume into the air and the light of the casino's fluorescence outside. I turned my head to the left, looking into the bathroom, which could be glimpsed from the bed. And at first, my blurry eyes mistook what I saw, and I thought it was Jennifer having a late-night bath. I blinked, rubbing my eyes, and when I opened them, I saw that Jennifer was in bed beside me, not in the tub. I looked back to the other room and blinked again, clearing my blurry vision. There was a shriveled old woman in the bath, grinning with a smile full of rotten brown teeth. Her eyes were missing, and only dark cavities could be seen there.
God.
For a few seconds, I couldn't do anything. I just laid there, frozen. The old woman continued staring at me with her dead-eyed gaze, her rotten smile growing wider, and I felt myself begin to shiver as the room got even colder. I realized I wasn't doing anything and tried to open my mouth to scream, but found myself paralyzed. I couldn't move or speak. But then she began leaning forward, swinging her gray, shriveled, waterlogged leg over the side of the tub, and I finally managed to let out a piercing scream. Jennifer woke up and was trying to comfort me, and I realized my eyes were squeezed shut. When I opened them, the woman was gone. I tried to explain to her what happened. Immediately, she was rationalizing it all, telling me it was a dream. She even went into the bathroom and checked to make sure, like a parent checking the closet for monsters. And she assured me the bathroom and the bathtub was bone dry. It was just a nightmare, she said, coming back into the bedroom. Eventually, I must have drifted off to sleep because I was the one who woke up to a scream this time, and also the sound of the bathroom door slamming shut. I saw her, Jennifer was screaming, hugging me tightly to herself. She's in the bathroom. That old woman is in the bathroom. So I stood up and my feet immediately felt wet when they hit the carpeted floor.
Oh, geez.
I looked down to see wet footprints leading up to the foot of the bed and a huge pool of water there.
Oh,
as if
God.
someone had come from the bathtub and stood there for a while, watching us as we slept.
That's creepy.
Taking a deep breath, ignoring my pounding heart and every ounce of my being telling me to run away, I pushed the bathroom door open and stepped inside. There was no one there. But the room was misty and humid. It felt stifling, as if someone had just taken a 3-hour steaming hot shower in there. Or a long, warm bath.
Ugh.
The mirror was fogged over, and as I stood there looking at it, words began to form, letters being written as if by an invisible finger. "Get out of my room," it said in large block letters.
Yeah.
So, yeah, creepy.
No,
And that
thank
sounds,
you.
that sounds like, man, they are pretty creative, and that is a fantastic story. But dig this. I did some research when I got home, trying to find out exactly what happened in that room and why that ghost was so angry, so insistent on keeping others out of there. I wondered who that woman was and why she was so tied to that room and the solitude that it afforded. What I discovered after some deep diving online was that someone died in that hotel room. A woman who was staying with her boyfriend on a vacation, just like we were, but he left her after a bitter argument, telling her he was going to go sleep with someone else. Apparently, she loved him more than anything and was so depressed over him leaving that she wanted a way out. The woman went back to her hotel room and took a bath, falling asleep in the bathtub after consuming a lot of alcohol and sleeping pills. She hoped he would come back to find her there, but he never did. Instead, a hotel employee stumbled upon her body after checkout time when they came to clean the room. Ever since that day, people who stay in the room say they feel cold chills up their spine, and some say they feel hands running through their hair in the dead of night as they attempt to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And others, especially couples like us, find wet footprints on the carpet when no one has set foot inside the bathtub. Now that, to me, that really drives it home when you...
Me no likey.
Yeah, you have a crazy experience like that, and then you go back home and you research it and you find out that other people have had the same experience as you did.
Yep.
And you know me, and you know the things I've shared, the stories. You know that one of the craziest things I have ever experienced was someone else confirming what I had seen for years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of those feelings that it was exhilarating to me because it confirmed that I wasn't just dreaming it or making it up. But it also just, it takes your heart and drops it into your stomach when you realize somebody else has had the same experience. Yeah. And so I would imagine
there's nothing else I can blame this
what
on.
he felt. Yeah. That's exactly the way this guy felt.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is right there at the falls. Yep. And it's another story of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you're looking at the falls from your hotel room. So I don't know. All of this stuff combined, the bloody battles, the War of 1812, you know, the
Lundy's Hill.
Yeah, Lundy's Hill, the suicides, the crazy attempts to go over the falls. Why would you go over the
Native
falls?
American battles?
Yeah. Why would you do that? Maybe a voice says, you can make it over those falls.
True.
You can do it. You can do it. And people are driven to do it. Even though from the standing at the observation deck, looking at it, you're going, yeah, there ain't no way you go over those falls and survive.
Right.
So like I said, crazy stories, lots more than I ever dreamed that we would uncover, but way more history that just feeds into why Niagara Falls is as haunted as it is.
Well, and think about this. All of this stuff, the history, the ghost stories, all of that. And it is a premier destination for honeymoons and weddings and all that kind of, it's a romantic spot.
Exactly.
Maybe we need to rethink. I don't mean to dash anybody's hopes, but maybe we need to rethink.
That's right. That's right. Give it a second thought before you go over there.
Right.
But have you heard another story about Niagara? That, like I said, there's a lot of them. There was no way I could cover even half of them. If you've got one that we left out, let us know. And one of the best places to do that is in our Facebook group. It is called The Graveyard. We've got thousands of people in there that share these type of experiences. And we love it. We all just want to hear some of those really great stories.
Yep.
Don't forget to check out our website, graveyardpodcast.com. There you can find links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise, and we do have a new store up now, so go check out. We're going to be adding some new items here in the next few weeks, so
and
be sure. We
have a new one in there currently. We
have a new one in there now.
Thumbnail that you see when you listen to our episodes is now merch. So you can get mine and Matt's face and the Skull Mike logo on the stuff. Right.
Yeah. So go and check that stuff out. We really appreciate it. We're not getting rich on this stuff by no means.
Right.
But you know, if you sport the show on a t-shirt or on a coffee mug or something, you may help bring some new people into the graveyard, and we want to hear their stories too. You can also become a patron on our website. And as I said, I've got a follow-up to tonight's show that I think you'll really enjoy coming up on the Patreon. But check it out. Tons of bonus content. You know, some of it's funny, some of it's scary, some of it's just crazy weird. And you can also get on there and, you know, get into Side Quest, which is just a heck of a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.